Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the ICG's Digital Academy webinar series. I'm Sally Alsop, the committee member responsible for running our webinar programme. So today we're delighted to welcome our speaker, Preriit Souda, Director of Data Science and Strategic Insights from PSA Consultants. For the last 15 years, Preriit has helped organisations answer different strategic questions by unravelling explicit and implicit human expression through the mining of social and digital data alongside other data sources like consumer surveys, Internet of Things data, CRM data, mobile behavioural data, weather data, locational data, etc. He works with structured and unstructured data analytics, data mining, machine learning, natural language and image processing, etc. A real data expert. He has worked for clients around the globe, operating across a range of sectors, including CPG, FMCG, finance, travel, telecoms, and the public sector. Preriit will be giving a presentation that was originally made at the EFMRA conference in 2024. He'll be talking to us about how society might evolve in the future, how work might evolve, and how consumer behaviours might change. Then he'll discuss how this might impact on the future of market research and insight. What might happen and where the industry might evolve? What might be the possible strengths and possible weaknesses? Finally, he'll talk about the skills that will be needed and what we can do today to be ready for tomorrow and to succeed in what the coming 10 years might bring for us. As usual, there'll be a Q&A session at the end when it'll be your opportunity to get involved and ask your questions. So if you have something to add to the discussion or you wish to ask a question for yourselves, please either type it in the chat box or turn on your webcam at the end and raise your hand. So before we begin, here are some more events that we have planned for you over the coming weeks. Don't forget that we're able to offer great value sponsorship opportunities with each of our webinars and online events. All you have to do is to contact Lucy if you'd like to know anything more about that. So now I'm going to hand over to Preriit.
Thank you. Thank you, Sally. I'll share my screen. Just a minute.
That looks great. Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks everyone for joining. So my name is Preriit. I'm assuming everyone can hear me. So my name is Preriit. I'm based in London. We work at the midpoint of data science consulting and marketing strategy. And my introduction is already given, so I'll skip that part. As far as this talk, which I'm going to take you through, this was actually created first, as mentioned, was done for ephemera, but this is not the first time we are working on future kind of projections or what might happen in future. Generally, most of the times we work with clients where we are looking at 2 to 5 years range, mostly 2 to 3 years, and maybe in some cases 2 to 5 years. But here in this case, well, certain things happened because of which we thought, okay, fine, we'll look at much more beyond that to, let's say, 10 years kind of a time frame. And that was stressful actually, because it's always difficult job doing any predictions for the future, because a lot of times, if you're right, it's like then you don't get the appreciation for that. People say, oh, we knew that, and if you're wrong, then you get all the bricks for that. So it's always a kind of a difficult thing, and so often the try is that you reduce the possibility of how much you are wrong rather than how much you are right. And again, as far as when you're looking at predictions, it's difficult in a sense, because let's say we are looking, at least I'm based in London, it's even difficult to predict whether it will rain tomorrow, or maybe rain in next few hours. So it's always difficult to go for. It's like 10 years down the line. Still, this is a try. Okay, and let's see how you feel. Having said that, initially I thought maybe rather than doing all the complicated stuff, which I'll show in a few minutes, I thought let's actually cheat this process. Okay. So I thought that probably rather than going through all the analysis and all, let's ask ChatGPT, okay, or Gemini or whatever. Okay. And So we asked that, how will world look like in 10 years? And ChatGPT raised its hand and said, no, I cannot answer that. Okay. So we tried a couple of times. The system said no. Okay. Then we actually again tried to tweak around, and they gave some it's very stupid kind of an answer. So basically we thought, okay, fine, now we are on our own. Okay. So what did we do? So, as far as this part is concerned, what we will look into, what we are looking into today, what we did was we looked at literature review on the future. So the horizon of the time frame was between 5 to 10 years. So basically, that's say 2030, 2035, and in some cases, 15 years time frame, which is 2040. So basically, what kind of academic research have been done, what kind of what think tanks have written about, what university professors or such kind of people or futurologists have written about that. That was one thing. Second thing, we did a kind of a comparative analysis. Comparative analysis means that, let's say, if we are looking at a fourth industrial revolution, okay, so then in that case, what were the effects of the past industrial revolutions? Okay, then let's say, how did, when internet came in, what was the effect of that? How did it change how we are living today? Okay, so what was the effects of that? So we did a kind of a comparative analysis that, let's say, if we are looking at such a juncture, what kind of changes might be possible? Okay. Then we looked at historical parallel pattern comparison. So let's say internet changes, which I mentioned, like dot-com effects. Uh, Going a bit further, we looked at, let's say, when steam engines came in. Okay, how did that change of how we as humans behave, or how the society behaves, or how the however however society changed, however businesses changed. Okay, like those kind of parallel comparisons. And the last part was, there were certain kinds of comparative analysis from certain specific geographies. So let's say after Soviet fall, okay, after the fall of the USSR, or it's like the economic liberalization, and let's say China and India and such kind of places, what were the effects of that? Okay, so all of that, kind of comparisons, it's like then went into what I'm going to show you next. Okay, so now, before we move ahead, we will talk about some of the probable scenarios of future. So we'll pick out some of the aspects of life. Okay, now again, life is too wide and too multidimensional, so I've just picked up a few. Okay, keep in mind, as I mentioned, no one can predict, but these are just a meta-analysis of probabilities of possibilities. Okay, what you are seeing is at a global level. So there are country and specific nuances also come in some cases. I will actually talk about those. Okay, but keep in mind, this is more of a kind of a global discussion. Okay, and these are more macro possibilities, not into nuances, because in fact, if we start going into each and every aspect, in fact, long PhD thesis can be written about that. So this is more like a broad brush. Okay, so let's talk about the first aspect. How will we talk? So let's say right now I'm talking to you, okay? But how will we talk in the future? So it is a possibility, and we are seeing some initial markers on that, that we might be in a situation where thoughts can trigger speech and actions, okay? Chip implants and augmented realities will become more prevalent, okay, which will help us link action and thoughts together. As a negative part of that, what can happen is that the impact of wealth gets amplified, which means that rich people are able to buy more machine power, while poor might not be able to. So that creates like a kind of a negative effect, that you are not only rich, it's like, but you are also have the capability to buy intelligence. Okay, on the positive side, if you think about it, the difference between the abled and the disabled, so which will reduce, because let's say for a lot of things, disabled people unfortunately aren't able to do a lot of things today. It's like, but certain kinds of these chip implants and all, it might help them bridge that gap. Okay, now you might think that, okay, fine, let's say if I have a chip and Sally has a chip, okay, what's the difference? So what's the differentiator? So here in that case, the importance of creativity, neurodiversity is like would actually be more important, because let's say if everyone is using the same machine, okay, what really differentiates is how you can think outside of the box, think outside of what the machine is telling you. Okay, means, and that's where the differentiations would come in. Now, moving on. Interactions, again, expressions, interactions, moving on. We as humans, sorry. um, we as humans will feel more comfortable working with machines and less with other humans. We are seeing some bits and pieces of that in several different societies and different generations. But humans are more likely to be more comfortable talking with machines than with the other humans. On the other side, the difference between actual human interaction and a machine interaction will get blurred because the machines will keep on improving and the conversations will be almost as humanly as possible. This can can very well lead to some other complications. Let's say the differentiation between the fake machine versus the real human, it keeps on reducing, so it can affect the trust which humans have in between, also the frauds and those kind of things. There's possibility that those things will go up. Additionally, well, there's a strong possibility, which is also happening nowadays, or at least for last, post social media boom, is that more micro clusters are being created, and those will further shrink down to probably nano clusters. Okay, now, will we have isolationist society or probably not? So if you look at from a so I have so here there were two possibilities. Okay, it's a combination of goods and the bads. So if you look at from one point of view, okay, humans, as I mentioned, feel more connected to machines. There's a possibility in some probabilistic situation where it's like people might be 10 years down the line, as they might also contemplate having relationships with machines or algorithms, and it's like that might also be a possibility in coming probably in the later part of that 10th year kind of a time frame. Marriages between humans, it's like will reduce, the proportionately is reducing, so that will further reduce, but the polyamorous relationships might go up proportionately. Replacement ratio is basically like let's say it's like two partners like producing babies, for example. Okay, replacement ratio is already reducing in Europe and Americas, or in the Western world. I think that will further will further reduce to probably even going from below 1 towards inching towards zero point 0.5. Now, say that looks negative. If you look at from a positive point of view, with more automation, society would have more time to spend on things that they like. Okay, so it's like that can be one thing. It can lead to more innovations. It can probably lead to more better mental health and better social interactions. So it's like it's not like a fixed kind of a dichotomous good or bad. Okay, so there are possibilities which might ensue, and it will vary from different country to country, society to society. Okay, now talking of society, we will there's a higher possibility of having lesser social discrimination but more economic disparity. As far as the population, as I mentioned before, the population in Western world and some parts of Asia so will keep on reducing. Population certainly will become more older on an average and live longer. Now, talking of America, because America actually featured quite heavily in the kind of literature review, because like, there's a lot of work, and it's like a lot of thinking on how America might evolve. Um, we had a lot of confusion about America because on one direction was that America will become less white and more browner. Let's say, for example, more immigration from the Latin American countries and also from Asia, so it might become more browner. On the other side, there's also one possibility that America will continue to remain predominantly white. I mean, and there was a lot of unclarity because there's a lot of fluidity in American politics, and so it's like in it means it's a bit unclear of how 4 to 7 years time frame so will proceed, and as far as the US is concerned. Okay, immigration. It's like because I think going from America, society is heavily influenced by immigration. So let's talk about immigration. Immigration, there are two possibilities. One is on the left, which you are seeing is largely what is a kind of considered accepted possibility, where it's like Western world, or I would say developed world, is like will continue to get a lot of low skilled labor. uh, Often these low skilled labor will be used for jobs which the native population doesn't want to do or cannot be automated. On the other side, there will be highly skilled worker immigration, which will continue to grow. Now that's one possibility, which is often the accepted kind of a possibility. There's a second possibility, means, and in fact, a lot of times when I talk about this, people think, "Are you sure?" Okay, and in fact, there was a I think there was a write up recently by some MIT professor also on that. There's a possibility that with growing automation, it's like there might be lesser need for it's like to get immigration get immigrants. Okay, so with more automation, this means you need less humans. Okay, and often what can happen, you might still need humans, like, but those human requirements, they might be able to be fulfilled by the lower middle class, which often up till now, it's like at least for last 30-40 years, they feel that they have been left behind, means all the advantages which the new economic growth has brought in. So this means that the lower middle class, let's say for example at the Midwestern America, etc., it's like they might come back to the economic growth and be a partner for that. This means that the immigration which generally expected, it's like as a detriment to them or a problem to them, say might means might not be the means the problem in the future. So again, this is controversial. Most people don't agree. So, but that's also a possibility. Okay. Now, moving on, jobs. Well, now this is a very big topic. Um, Rapid automation of skills can lead to societal frustrations. Now, the thing is, let's say if today you are doing something in X way, okay, and tomorrow suddenly you are asked to do something in a Y way. It's easier said than done because it takes time, like to get adjusted and so and so. Now if the speed of the change as it keeps on increasing, it's very difficult to adapt, and that can lead to societal frustrations. Another thing is, up till now, let's say for example, if I'm competing for a job, for example, okay, I'm competing with another human, okay, human X versus human Y. Okay, in the future it will be more prevalent of, or means or a common possibility that human will not only be competing with other humans, okay, so, but also with machines. Okay, so when employer is looking at things, like they are looking at what can be automated versus what can be outsourced to what a native human can do. Okay, so that's a very strong possibility. Okay, there's a possibility of having lack of jobs, okay, for many, and also disinterest in jobs despite being availability. So like there can be a lot of jobs, but a lot of people might not be interested on that, and this can actually lead to people either actually policymakers and politicians, like being a bit confused, like do they make policies to have more automation, or do they bring in more more immigration? Like, so that's it's a kind of a conundrum which might come up in future. If you look at from an employer's point of view, employers will always has this problem that in one way they might have to remove people. On the other side, they will constantly need people with certain skills which will be difficult to fill in. Okay, so there's this constant, because new domains are rising and there's a need for human expertise, but there would not be enough of talent. Humans on the other side, or if you look from an employee's point of view, it's constantly complicated because constantly evolving job situations. If I learn something today, okay, it might not be relevant tomorrow. Okay, it's like, so that's where that constant conflict and conundrum is very well possibly can exist. Okay, now in all of those things, is one thing which we continuously found was that there are hard skills and there are soft skills. Soft skills will continue always to be important, and as you traverse through those constant flux of hard skills, soft skills will help you differentiate and remain in the game. Now, fluidity of work. Is there used to be times where it's like you used to have a job as soon as you get out of college and you probably die in that job. So basically, it's like you retire from that. That certainly going off in several countries, and it's will certainly keep on reducing. So no one gets a job for life, but you can try several things in your working lifetime. So let's say today you are working as an analyst, like maybe tomorrow you might be working as a, means I don't know, so you might be interested in gardening, so you become a gardener, or means, or you become a robotics engineer, whatever. Okay, so in a lifetime you will have more things to try. Okay, there will be new professions which are created every day, and these will require skills which otherwise society did not think were useful. So let's say, in fact, when I was speaking at one of the conference, it's like I told that, you know what, when I was a child, okay, people used to say don't play video game, okay, because it's a waste of time. But nowadays, in fact, one of our clients actually, well, works on video gaming, okay, and they often require people who play video games, okay. So basically, playing video games like can get you employed with that particular company. So such kind of things will continue to grow. Okay, um, there will be a longer working lifetime beyond 70. It means, and there are two possibilities for that. One is that due to economic, the way of how economy is evolving, this means that well, there is more need for economic well-being and all. Okay, so that means that it's not that what you would have accomplished or accumulated till the age of 65 or so and so would be enough. That's one reason. Second reason is that because you are living longer, so let's say you retire at 65, mostly people die, let's say for example at 80, you have 15 years, what do you do about that? Okay, like, so it's more about mental well-being and keeping yourself employed. Time of work will probably be less restrictive. It might not be just be 9 to 5, but it will be more outcomes oriented. Okay, now location of the works might not be just limited to just one particular I mean location, as the one particular country. It would be global anywhere, unless it is restricted by the law. It's like, so because we also find means possibilities that legal systems might draw a line between where people can come from. And certainly, as I mentioned, constant need for skill updation and learning. Now, talking of updation constantly, there is a very strong possibility of reduction in the proportion of people going for formal education via universities. So people might not go in formal colleges, but they will always probably be in college or be in a learning mode almost every day or almost at regular intervals, like just to keep pace with the way of how the world is evolving. Now, movement. How will we travel? Now, um, different modes of transport. So it's not like it will just be automated. Means there will just be automated cars everywhere. There's a possibility that there will be a very strong coexistence of different modes of transport, and the factors which can influence that is automation, labor availability, legislations, and also societal trust on machines, because some societies are more trustful of machines and some are not, and that can also influence the uptake. Also, what we saw is that, and what we analyzed was that, there's a possibility that our work related travel will keep on reducing, but our leisure related travel will keep on increasing. Okay, and as far as different personal transport modes are concerned, again, there will be a wide array going from partial assistance, which also already exists now, to almost going to full automation, and all four of these ones which I'm showing here, they will coexist. There's a strong possibility for that. Okay, now economy. As far as economy is concerned, there's a multi-currency basket world, say, well, coming up soon in the world, and certainly the economic powers will be much beyond USA, which is still almost the case, almost there. At a personal level, the population will be more comfortable, but they will not feel that they are comfortable. So the satisfaction level will be lesser. Friction to payment will be lesser, or almost nil, but the effort to earn is they will keep on increasing. And say, if while talking about recession, there's a possibility that we might always be in some kind of recession, but stock market will be disjointed from the realities of a common human, or means, or a common citizen. So there might always be a recession and always be a boom. UBI, which is universal basic income, we might be in a situation where we might see certain countries come up with some forms of UBI in some ways, which then means that higher taxation would certainly have to be brought in. Okay. Now, as far as the economy is concerned, we might see in some portions very high wastages and some portions extreme scarcities. Means and that scarcity might actually be might lead us to be more sustainable. Natural produce because of agro and water crisis, it's like natural produce might cost very high. On the other side, processed foods will keep on getting cheaper. Okay. Now, wars and conflicts, higher possibility of bio wars, and also the discussion of possible nuclear terror. Climate change induced wars, and the proportion of that can increase, although it might be cloaked in different ways. Bigger democracies might not face external wars, but more internal violent conflicts, and there are different reasons for that. And in fact, wars and conflicts might actually be a big generator for economic growth and employer of human resource. Okay. Government and global institutions will continue to lose, will continue to have lack of trust, and it will also be an interesting because as the world is becoming more multipolar, so there will be more conflicts, but they will not be direct, but indirect, and often the conflicts will be more multidimensional. It's not physical, but it's economical, social, and informational. Now, the last part as far as society is concerned is health. Okay, now when you're looking at health here, so certainly we are living longer, we'll continue to live longer because of better diagnostics, predictions, and monitoring. Global hospitals will become more and more of a reality. So because well, let's say people living in, let's say, Africa, so might be treated by people or surgeons in London or New York, or that means whatever. Okay. Innovative drug deliveries, so the way of how drugs are delivered, so that will become more innovative. Drug discoveries will be more accelerated, and there will be more and more of more precise personalized medicines, which are cheaper to research and cheaper to produce. Additionally, what we saw was that up till now, health was largely looked at like from the domain of health expert or health professionals or doctors, but there will be more and more integration of technology, pharmaceuticals, health, and governments. And because there's a possibility of higher frequency of biowars in some way, it might become a new income for the industry. And in fact, disease control might become a bigger concern from a national security. It's like because up till now, those were largely limited more from a health point of view, but will become more and more proportionately important from a national security perspective for different countries. Okay. Now, moving on. So this is more about overall society and culture and about the countries and different things. Okay. Now, let's look at market research industry. Okay. Now, if you look at the subject, okay, we will see more and more multi-sensory, multi-dimensional advertising and customer experience. Okay, there will also be more and more cultural need for cultural hybridicity between the Asian and the Western economic powerhouses, which will mean that there will be need for more culturally diverse workforces. Okay, new streams of research can emerge because the customer experience will be often be more influenced by machines. So this means that machines can become a gateway into the minds of the consumer. Like, so let's say, for example, if you have a IoT fridge, okay, Internet of Things fridge, okay, these fridges, refrigerators, okay, so men well can make order for your next milk, for example, okay, and the milk comes in and it's replenished on your I mean so in your fridge. Okay, this means that if you are a milk selling brand, okay, yes, you have to convince the human to buy your milk, okay, but in a sense you also have to convince the algorithm of the machine to buy your milk. It means, and that kind of possibility can slowly start start dawning onto the means people who are well making customer strategies. Okay. Now, moving on, if you look from a commerce point of view, higher possibility of insourcing, so basically client doing themselves, or machine sourcing, which is like outsourcing to the machine. So that insourcing, machine sourcing, and certainly outsourcing, which is global workforce and competition. So this means that you are not just competing with people in the UK or US, but the entire world. Now, if you look at data, what about data? Now, as far as data is concerned, there are different ways and there are different dilemmas which research buyers will have. on one direction, and there is a thing which is around cheap summarized insights versus costly raw data. So it's like raw data will become more and more costlier, while the summarized website data will become more and more cheaper. There will also be more costlier, claimed and smaller human data, but you might be able to get cheaper, larger behavioral data. Okay, means although in a lot of cases that might be behind the some kind of garden walls, it's like, but if you are able to access that, that will be much more cheaper, much more larger, but more behavioral in nature. Okay, and not the claimed. There's also a possibility of more static pool of cheaper insights versus a constant dilemma of having a custom ad hoc more costlier insights. Now, mean, there was also another thing actually, means when I present this slide, people often talk about data and privacy. Yes, there are legalities, but because of some of the developments in last 1.5 year, there was too much of grayness because there are certain new innovations which have actually added a new spin ball, well, to the discussion on data. So that's why here I have not gone into privacy, because and also privacy, it also varies from different country to country, because let's say, well, Europe has very high standards when it comes to privacy, while America actually has very low standards, and almost very less legal restrictions when you are looking at it's like data. So here, because we are looking at global, here I've not gone on to privacy. Although one thing which I will say is privacy is that across different geographies, especially in the Western world, there is certainly a growing concern on how their data is being used. Okay, although that is very low in developing economies like in the Asia. Okay. Moving on, markets. So if you look from a markets point of view, there'll be more and more integration. So it's like, as an insight professional, you might not be just looking at or working with people who are market research professionals, but more with people who are comprised of, or well, the team comprised of strategy people, marketing, advertising, technology, R&D, all of those put together. So it's not just one way of thinking which you all have to think, but also from every different person's perspective, which has to be integrated. Certainly, there will be more consolidations, more commoditization, more automation, and so, which can actually lead to more pay stagnancies and reduced headcounts. Now, a lot of people say that, you know what, we will see a high growth in tech first. That is certainly going to be the case. Okay, but where I feel, and this is a bit of an opinion, so here I feel that yes, technology first is going to be more prevalent, but it will be a tech plus human first. Okay, tech first plus human first businesses, because there's a limit to what technology can achieve. And when you actually integrate the creativity with the hard power of technology, like that is where the market will keep on dawning into that, you know what, like this is where the real differentiation comes in. Now, moving on, if you look from a personal point of view, what might a future inside professional's job look like? So it might not be just mathematical or qualitative. It might be a combination of a lot of things. So yes, you will have to have some understanding of mathematics, statistics, and I mean such kind of things. You might also have to have more understanding of more analytical tools and the basics of how the technologies of the computer works, but also understanding of human psychology, social sciences, and certainly domain knowledge, marketing, advertising, all of those kind of things. So basically, the kind of dichotomy which exists as of now, it's like that will actually might integrate all together. Means, and certainly there will be constant need for updation, because new data sources and ecosystems will keep on pouring every day or almost at regular intervals, and there will be a constant need for creative use of that, means of those data, means of those data sources. So it's not just one single source, but an amalgamation of different well, sources, along with you bringing in all of these different ways of doing things. Okay, human relations. And it's like this is quite important, because in a sense, a lot of times we just look at from one particular dimension, and that's where you will need the ability to work with people from different dimensions, be in a constant learning mode. And certainly you will also have to have more of a cultural understanding, because you are constantly will be dealing with people from different parts of the world across different generations. So that constant understanding of the cultural nuances in your personal relationship well, professional relationships. Okay, like that comes into picture. The last part, cognitive needs, if you think about it, it's less about just knowing about how to do a tool, but the more important would be more about ability to think. Because let's say, for example, you can have a machine which can do a lot of stuff, but you will still have to tell the machine what to do. And this means that you would have to learn not how to do things, but also but to how to think, to how to make the machine do the things. So the ability to think becomes more and more important. Ability to choose the right tool, because there will be a lot of tools which are certainly coming up, okay, which will keep on growing. So but finding the right tool and not fighting with the machine, but using machine as a friend, uh, to increase your capabilities. And the last thing which I have here from operational point of view, is that the from executional point of view, is that there will be more of the need of more inquisitiveness. So the inquisitive Sherlock Holmes in you, it becomes more and more important. Effective use of tools, and a stronger personal brand, because you will see more and more companies going through a lot of churns here and there. So this means that in that case, it's you as a person, how you build your own brand, means will actually play a important role. And the last thing is that up till now, we are often looking at market research as a market research, but there is a possibility with all generative AI and etc., with that advertising might actually reduce in proportion, but market research, or marketing insight or marketing strategy might be able to take from the ideation to execution. So this means that you might actually be in the driving situation, well, means rather than being dependent on your advertising partners. That is a possibility. And so going from understanding, conceptualization, planning, and activation, all being controlled, say, by the marketing insights professional, probably in next 10 years. That's all. That's where I will end. And that's all. Thank you. I'll
That was
actually get my battery. Just a minute.
fascinating.
Sorry, go ahead. Please continue.
That was fascinating, Preriit. Thank you so much. It's terrifying, but very interesting to hear your ideas on this. And yeah, absolutely fascinating. I can see that there's a hand up already. Muriel, if you'd like to, do you want to put your webcam on and ask your question yourself? Please go ahead. You're on mute, so there we go. Oh, we still can't hear you, Muriel. I don't know why.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about this. Yeah, I was actually clapping. I thought it was really brilliant. So it was. I didn't have an immediate question, although I suppose there is kind of one. I'd be interested in your thoughts about food and how people buy food and how people are making food choices. I don't know if you've got a perspective on that, in the sense that, there's been COVID has kind of affected people's choices, and then the cost of living rises and the problems with food supplies, etc. So do you have a view of, would that be affected by AI or any other trends that you're seeing?
Okay, see again, so, means a lot of these things are very wide and very big. So having said that, see if and what we did was looking more from a macro point of view rather than going to specific of the sectors. But one of the things which I mentioned was that there will be more and more interest on natural produce, but it will become more and more costly because of climate change and all of those kind of things. So while people would like to have that, but the cost factor might not make it easy to access. Okay, and also it will bring in a variety of different things, and we are becoming more and more busy. So this also means that it adds another factor. Um, the processed food will certainly keep on become cheaper. So while people might not be fantastically happy, it's on eating that or consuming that, it will become more and more of a reality. Means and also a lifestyle, as we are progressing as a society, will have more and more consumption of that. Although they're in their head, they would have that this is not the greatest thing they are consuming, but this is what they are consuming. So it's like I don't have a particular one on the food, but this is what the macro trends which we saw when we look at how people are consuming what they are eating in a sense. So hope that gives you some kind of an idea. So,
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks a lot.
Any more questions from anyone? Okay, so I have a question for you, Preriit. You may have covered this, but I'd like to ask you a little bit more about it. Do you think there is a risk of rising social unrest? Because there is presumably a danger that as there's more and more automation, that could be restricted to those people who own that automation. And although there are potentials, possibilities for massive social good, if that's not shared out among people who've got fewer jobs and more leisure time, if wages don't rise, etc., there's a potential for more social unrest. Is that a possibility?
yes, very much. So, well, so here, well, there are two things which I'll just differentiate. Um, One is what the data said, and there will also be my own personal experiences. Okay, so if you look at from a data point of view, if you look at macro understanding of AI, it's a fairly split between people who are saying it's a good, okay, where it will generate new jobs and new kind of jobs will be required and blah blah blah. Okay, and on the other side, there are people who are concerned, and that's why people are talking about even the like bringing in more UBI, which is universal basic income, and all those kind of stuff. Okay, so it's fairly split but if I still have to put some kind of a proportion, I would say 60-40. 60 are lesser optimistic and 40% are more optimistic, and 40% optimism is often coming from people who are more technologically focused or who are more in a better position to take advantage of that. Okay, now if you're looking onto that, what's happening is that with more and more automation, and especially the likes of which has happened in last 2 to 3 years, the amount of resource or the money which is required to do certain things has shot up like anything. Okay, this means that more and more concentration of power for certain things will continue to happen. This has a higher probability of causing or impacting the white collar jobs, because up till now only the brown collar jobs were affected by automation. Now the white collar jobs will also start being affected, which in a sense can actually lead to social problems, although they might not be cloaked as a social problems. They might have different kinds of outer wrappers to it, but often the underlying currents would be of that sort, and they might actually lead to certain complications. So that's it's like those are the kinds of step-by-step possibilities which we saw. There are different country-specific nuances because different societal culture, societal and legal frameworks work differently. But yes, so the direct answer is yes, possibly. Okay, as I but there are going to be variety of different possibilities. So yes, so yeah, I'll probably not give my opinion. It's like this is what this is what the data was saying. So I'll stop there. I hope that gives you some idea. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Not really very good news from that perspective. Paul, you've got your hand up. Would you like to put your webcam on and ask a question?
Yes, thank you. It was brilliant, Preriit, and yeah, very, very scary in some ways, but hopefully quite exciting as well. My question is around who your go-to people are to follow on this, because obviously there's a whole range of opinions out there. Some think that we're all going to die in a Matrix style universe, and some people think it's going to solve everything. Who are the most balanced voices, do you think, to listen to?
Hold on. So it's like you are saying, okay, so well, so there's there's an optimistic future and there's a pessimistic future. Hold on. So what's the question? Sorry, I missed that. Sorry, go ahead.
It was basically, is there a balanced view? You know, some people are very negative or positive. They might actually be the case, but who would you consider to be a reasonable source for a very balanced opinion on where we're going in the next 10 years?
Okay. Okay. So I'll give you two anecdotal examples, okay, and then I'll come on to your question. So it's like when we did this, I actually showed this presentation to a few people. Okay, so one is a British politician. Okay, and he asked him, and I showed him a good friend of mine, and he said, "I think Prerit, you are being too optimistic." Okay, that is one thing. I showed it to another guy who is a Wall Street person. He said, "I think Prerit, you are too pessimistic. You need to go out and wash your head." Okay, now there's also now when we looked at research or futurological as a kind of work from different regions, okay, Western world, if I'm putting an average, okay, now averages are not always perfect, but if I'm giving like on an average, there's more pessimism. If I look at more Asian kind of coverage, okay, there's more optimism. Okay, means and there are well, there's a bit of societal contextual nuances to that. I would say that um, all are right and all is everyone is right and everyone is wrong. Now, if you're looking at what kind of sources you have to look into, is one of the things which we tried on to is that is there any kind of a meta information about the people who are writing something? So is there any kind of a bias which they are bringing in when they are doing some kind of a research? Do they have any kind of a motive what they are trying to push? Okay, so that was one thing which we, although I won't say that I've been completely being very able to weed that out. It's like, but we tried to have some kind of well thinking on that. If you remove those things, I would say that if you look at pure data, there is more pessimism. Okay, it's like, but I also feel that, and this is a bit of opinion, there are certain things which the data doesn't tell. And often we humans often can defy or go in pathways which probably is difficult to predict probabilistically based on historical data. And I think with that possibility, I feel that humans somehow always have reason for optimism.
Find a way.
It's like, so from that point of view, I would say that
Mhm.
yes, it's a close balance. If you if you weed out all the biases and the well reasons why someone is saying something, but if you go over that from a humanistic point of view, I think there is still optimism. I won't say there's a pessimism. So yeah, yeah, it's slightly philosophical. It's not exactly analytical in what I'm saying, but yes. So
No,
yeah,
that's great.
I'll stop
Thank
there.
you.
Yeah, sorry,
That's
Victor.
great. So I think Victor has a question to ask. Victor, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to find how to reactivate my camera.
If you hover, there should be a little icon at the bottom that
There's mute, unmute. Oh, here we go. Sorry, here we go. Yeah, I just reflected back on that slide where you said where you're showing that some people seem to be more inclined towards interacting with technology rather than people earlier on. And with that in mind, how do you think people will find escapism? So I want to avoid talking about AI and VR and all that, but maybe more on the human side, like travel, for example, and going out, meeting people, going to the pub, that kind of thing. Is that all likely to any indications that that's going to change in any great way?
Okay. So again, as I mentioned, so we did not go specific onto any sectors. We look at more macro kind of possibilities. Okay. So it's like, so the things which you mentioned, it's like, I mean, I think in the slides I mentioned a few things. As a human, we are actually getting more and more comfortable with machines and less with humans. So if you're going and well, the proportion of people going and talking to other humans will has a strong possibility of reducing, which over the trends is at least appearing to be. Okay. Having said that, now when you're looking at travel, means in my slides where it's like we looked into where it's like work travel goes down, but leisure travel goes up. So this means that I am not traveling out of my or of my house or office or whatever. Okay. Oh, well, I'm not traveling out of my house for office purposes, but I am actually compensating that of my need to still get out of my small place, whatever I'm living at. It's like means and go and explore things outside. So that means goes up. So in a way, Victor, in a way, we still want to go and see humans. We still want to, well, in some way interact. But it's just that on a regular day-to-day basis, it's like we might be more comfortable just being confined, but we still want to go out and we still want to experience humanity. But it's like, means I don't want to do it, want to do it every day as a compulsion, but why I want to do it on my own, on my own sweet will kind of stuff. So that can be a bit of a possibility again. It's like, so, but the last part which I said is my interpretation, it's not the data. Okay. It's like
That's fine.
what the initial parts were the one where we saw some, it's like data of how the trends were coming up.
Okay, that's a good answer.
Any more questions from anyone? Liz, go ahead, ask a question.
Yeah, I mean, this is a more general question. I'm doing a big project at the moment where we're talking to asset managers who are really focused on responsible investment. And I'm sure a lot of us here have done a lot of projects over the last few years about ESG and sustainability and its implications. What did the future view suggest about the implications of sustainability? Did it surface that companies are going to hit their net, and indeed countries are going to hit their net zero targets? Or was it seemed to be quite skeptical about the success of quite a lot of initiatives?
Okay, I think that would be very specific for me to say comment on. Having said that, see, I think one of the things which, and as I have mentioned, it's not into the specifics of any sector. It's more at at a very macro level. Yes, if you, it's like, think about, I think I'm just looking at my slides. There was an instance where I said that there will be a forced sustainability. So it might be, so there's one is, yes, you go in net zero and etc. etc. Okay. But because of the climate change, you might have to, because of compulsion, become sustainable. It might be not always because you are trying to do good, but because there's a compulsion to become sustainable or being more efficient in how you are using natural resources. Because what we had was, and this actually came up because of something which happened in financial sector, actually. So when we are looking at net zero, well, not exactly net zero, sustainability and all as part of the, as a sub dimension of analysis. Okay. Here, what was, let's say, if in the US right now, there's a lot of politics around sustainability, a lot of politics around this like net zero, the way of how, well, let's say the Blackstone, BlackRock, Goldman Sachs, etc., are talking about, means how they are investing onto certain net zero companies and etc. Okay. There we saw that it brings in a lot of politics because of, and again, America is a very big economy, so it plays a lot of important role proportionately. It might not always be because they want to do good, but because there's a reason market forces are forcing them to do certain things. So like, that is where we saw possibility. Again, keep in mind, this research was not about net zero or sustainability. This was a very small portion of where we looked at what might influence economic movements. So that's where I will probably stop there. So,
Interesting. I mean, I would tend to argue that it's pervasive and it's impacting all aspects of society potentially. But one thing we are seeing at the moment in the piece that we're doing is in the US, there is, compared to this time last year, there is massive pushback on ESG and it's being driven politically. Whereas in Europe and parts of Asia, it's going the other way, and it affects all aspects of our lives. So it's an interesting area. So I wouldn't think about it just as being a financial or political issue. It's a big issue.
yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, means actually, just ending in just a second. Yes, you are very true. So it's like, again, this is not part of this work. Okay. So, but across my other work, I have also seen that, yes, Europe is the most conscious about its sustainable requirements and all. Asia, yes, but where the economic factors come in, the prices and those kind of things, probably those take over of how much green they want to be. In America, it's a hell lot of a political kind of influence on that. So probably
Yes.
I'll stop there. We'll say.
Thank you.
Any more questions from anyone? No? Well, I think it's been a wonderful, well, presentation to start off with, and then an interesting discussion afterwards. So thank you very much indeed, Preriit. It's certainly given us lots of food for thought. And let's hope that the powers that be take on board some of these predictions and make the right choices while they still can. Okay, all right. Well, thanks again, Preriit. Thank you to everybody for logging in today. Do join us for one of our future webinars. There's still lots of exciting things coming up in the next few weeks. And have a great afternoon, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.